Welcome to everyone. This session is designed to demonstrate how a range of interactive tools can be used to engage participants during a web conference. We've put together an example session based on good slide design in order to demonstrate the use of these tools. The session will take about 30 minutes and is being recorded. So get ready to see how many ways your audience can be involved and take part. I'm now going to hand over to our presenter for today.
Thank you, Esther. Hello and welcome. My name is Russell Simmons, e-learning advisor for JISC RSC Wales. One of the challenges you have to overcome as an online presenter is how to keep your audience interested and engaged during your presentation. This presentation has been designed, therefore, to ensure you have plenty of opportunity to interact with me using all the tools available to you. So the aim of today's session is to explore ways in which you can improve your slide design, and we are going to do this by undertaking some activities around slide design in these 8 areas. So let's begin by talking about simplicity. What do I mean by simplicity? I will give you a minute to examine the next slide, and then using the chat pane, I want you to tell me what you would change about this slide. But do not press enter until I ask you to. So I want you to tell me what you would change about this slide, put it in the chat pane, but don't press enter until I tell you to. Okay, if you can start pressing enter for me, please. Hopefully you should have had enough time. Okay, some interesting comments there. I'd like to call upon John maybe to share his views with us using the microphone. So if you will enable your microphone, John, and maybe join us and tell us about your thoughts.
Okay, it's very busy on the right-hand side, and you can't see any of the text in the graph. You can't really make out what the graph is. So I'd put the graph on a separate slide, possibly similar with the organisational chart that's there as well.
Okay, thanks very much for that, John. I think it's evident to see from the slide and from your comments that the slide has no clear focus, and it contains superfluous information that, quite frankly, just serves to confuse the viewer about what the actual message is. So that leads us on very nicely to the next topic, which is focal point. And for this activity, I'm going to show you a picture, and I would like you to tell me where you think the focal point is. And I want you to do that by using the pen tool, which is the 3rd tool from the top on the annotation tools. And I want you to draw a circle around where you think the focal point of the picture is. So there's the picture. So using the pen tool, I want you to draw a circle around the focal point of this picture. Okay, we've got one suggestion. I think you pretty much got the idea that the focal point really is based on around the dog's face. And there is some science behind this. And I'm going to refer you to a well-known principle called the rule of thirds. And the rule of thirds was first described in 1797. And this guideline proposes that an image should be imagined as divided into 9 equal parts, as you can see here, and that important compositional elements should be placed along these lines or their intersections. I'm going to ask Esther to drop a little link into the chat bar for you, where you can get some further information on this rule of thirds. I've got another, whilst Esther's doing that, I've got another example here of a slide that uses the rule of thirds, where the actual focus of the composition is actually on an intersection of those lines. So good use of graphical images is important in slide design, but also the way that we annotate them is too. So now we're going to look at type size and typeface, and this activity is in two parts. Firstly, we're going to look at type sizes and then typefaces. So using the pointer tool, point to the type size that you are most likely to use in a slide. So I want you to use the pointer tool, which is the second tool down from the top, and I want you to tell me the type size that you are most likely to use in a slide. Okay, there's a nice range of sizes there, ranging from 40 point up to 60 point. And I think the guideline here really is when deciding what font size to use in your presentation, really you should just make sure it is big enough so that the audience could read it. Moving on to the next exercise, I'd now like you to use the pen tool to put a tick next to the font that you are most likely to use in a presentation. And again, the pen tool is the third tool from the top. Okay, there's a very strong consensus there for the middle of the top row, which is the Arial font. And again, you know, when you're making your choices about any part of your presentation, you should choose the best font by, first of all, considering your message and your audience, and then asking yourself the question, is it appropriate? For example, if you were presenting to some children, then maybe it would be acceptable to use the top left, which is Comic Sans. And if you were presenting to a senior management team somewhere, then maybe you'd be better off using the font that you've chosen, which is the Arial font. So once you've considered the size of your text and what typeface you're going to use, it's time to move on and ask how much text to use. Now, there's a lot of advice available on how much text you should use on your presentation slides. So for this activity, I would like you to consider the following slide and raise your hand to tell me what you would do to improve it. So I'm going to ask for a volunteer on the microphone to tell us what they would do to improve this next slide. So I'll give you 30 seconds or so to consider it, and then I'll call, or one of you can put your hand up and tell me what you think about this slide. Okay, Sharon, thanks very much. If you can enable your microphone and maybe share with us what you would do to improve this slide.
I would start by reducing the amount of text that's on the slides to start with. This bullet point layout is quite good, but there's just a lot of text and a lot of bullet points. And I think as well, just having the plain white background is a little bit dull. We've looked at images previously there, so maybe sort of an image or something in the background as well would improve it.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Sharon. And I'm going to ask Esther to drop a link into the chat pane there whilst I'm talking you through this. And this is a link to a very, very good website where it gives you top 10 slide tips. What I'd like to leave with you this section is the best slides may have little or no text at all. Just remember that slides are meant to support the narration of the speaker, not make the speaker superfluous. By that I mean, if you put up a slide like that on the screen, people will be immediately drawn to start to read it. So, you know, a presenter's role then becomes somewhat redundant. So now that we have a better idea about how much text to use, its size and typeface, let's see how we should look to our audience. We're now going to consider how our text looks against the slide background and ask whether there is sufficient contrast. For this activity, I'm going to ask you to use the polling tools. So using the polling tools, tell me which line of text offers the best readability for you. So I want you to choose A, B, C, D, or E. So using the polling tool, tell me which line of text offers the best readability for you. Okay, I'll ask Esther to display the results there. Well, obviously there's an overwhelming majority here that says slide D, and I think that it's pretty apparent really that that does offer the best readability. But remember that everybody is different, and some people will find color combinations more accessible, and also that this applies to images as well as text. And here are some examples of some guidelines really about using text against backgrounds, and that's always best to use a dark background and light text, or a light background with dark text. And here's an example and don't be afraid of using black and white either, because that has quite an impact. Okay, moving on to balance. For this activity, I want you to use the polling tools again to tell me what you feel about this slide that I'm going to show you. This time we'll just use the green tick or red cross, and I want you to tell me whether you think this slide is balanced. So green tick for yes and red cross for no. Tell me whether you think that slide is balanced. Okay, there's an overwhelming consensus there that says the slide isn't balanced. I'm going to call on maybe Alison to maybe say, or if you were the one that said that you thought it was not balanced, then I'm going to call on Alison to maybe share her views.
Hi. I spent a lot of time thinking about this one because I've come down on the side that it's not balanced, but it's not totally unbalanced either, if that makes sense. I think, really speaking, if I was designing this one, I would just tweak it so the layout was a bit more consistent, equal use of white space.
Okay, thanks very much, Alison. That was very good. Thank you very much. I think from my point of view, the slide just doesn't feel right, and with a little bit of manipulation, as Alison just mentioned, the slide can have a little bit more impact. So making your slide accessible and feel right is important, but so is the way that you view it. So we're going to move on to movement, and you may want to use movement with your slide design to draw your audience's attention to a focal point or message. In Western culture, we read from left to right and top to bottom. And this is useful to know if you want to guide the eye of the viewer across the screen. Here is a simple example of movement. And what I want you to do is, using the pen tool, that's again the third tool from the top, tell me where you think the woman is leading you to look. So just using the pen tool, if you can just make a mark, that's very good, thank you. And again, that's quite obvious. And if I move on to the next slide, you can see that that your eyes are being drawn up to the top right-hand corner of that slide, and that's obviously where is the best position to put your message. The next slide is slightly different, and again, I'm going to maybe pick on one person this time, and I'm going to pick on Kieran. If you would maybe consider this slide, and using the highlighting tool, or the pen tool rather, I want you to draw the line on that slide of where your eyes are being drawn. So using the highlighter tool, I want you to illustrate to me where you think the line of movement is. Okay, that's very, very good. And that's where the line of movement actually is shown. So that's a very good illustration of a slide that is displaying movement. It's drawing your eyes to a particular point on the screen. We're now going to move on to our final activity. And here now I'm really looking to draw on all we've learned together by considering unity, or as I like to call it, the look and feel. So consistency or unity is an important factor of slide design. And for our final activity, I want you to tell me, using the text box, how can we design a slide deck so that they all look as though they belong together? So you've seen my slide deck there. You may have your own, thinking of your own in mind, but I want you to consider, and now using the text box, which is the fourth tool from the top, I want you to consider and tell me, using text on the screen, how can we design a slide deck so that they look as though they belong together? So I'm seeing same text size and type, which is good. A consistent theme, consistent use of fonts, style of graphics, format, layout. I think that there's a definite overwhelming message coming through here about consistency of our design. And I'm going to share with you now a design that was done earlier this year by my colleague Esther Barrett, who introduced me today. And this is one of, or a subset of one of her slide decks of a presentation that she did. And you can see that there is strong use of colors, good use of pictures. There's a consistency of typeface. It's the same one that's been used all the time. Esther has not been afraid of being very conservative with the amount of text that she uses, because at the end of the day, you know, a presentation is about the presenter and not about the slides and the amount of text that you use. And there's a consistency of the layout or theme. So to recap, so using the 8 ideas for enhancing slide design, I've used all the available interactivity tools to keep you engaged and involved in this presentation. I'd like to thank you very much for joining in with today's session, and I hope you enjoyed the activities, and good luck with your slide design.